Hello, darkness, my old friend. I've come to talk with you again, because a vision softly creeping left its seeds while I was sleeping, and the vision that was planted in my brain still remains within the sound of silence.
Hello and welcome to the podcast that has already been killed by horrifying monsters who hunt by sound, FilmBookCast, the official podcast of FilmBook.com. My name is Mike Smith. Joining me, as always, is a man who started off in comedy but now has a promising career as a horror director.
Mike DeCrescio.
How you doing today, Mike?
I am doing well. I'd also like to draw the comparison between John Krasinski and myself with our great beards. That's all.
Sure. Both comedic actors who moved into horror movies, and also you have beards.
Yeah.
You are truly two peas in a pod.
Mm-hmm.
If you've never listened to FilmBookCast before, first we start with some film news, and then we move on into some discussions where Mike and I each discuss whatever piece of media we have been consuming lately, and then after that we'll move on into our featured review. This week we are discussing the new film from director John Krasinski, a.k.a. Jim from The Office, A Quiet Place.
I'm sure he loves that.
I'm sure he very much appreciates constantly being referred to as Jim from The Office. Yeah, you know, there's a weird alternate universe, Mike, where next week Avengers: Infinity War comes out, and John Krasinski stars as Captain America and Emily Blunt as Black Widow.
Yeah.
Both of those almost happened, and then they didn't.
And it's probably also an alternate universe where critically acclaimed director of A Quiet Place stars in new hit sitcom The Office.
Or like a revival of The Office, or wait, what are you trying to say?
Other way around. He was a breakout horror director who broke into a career of comedy.
True. He did a reverse Jordan Peele.
Yes, correct.
What just happened there. So A Quiet Place, brand new horror movie just came out, directed by John Krasinski, an unlikely source for a horror movie, but we were pretty excited to talk about it. Got great reviews, and I won't say what we thought about the movie yet, because we are not going to review it yet. Mike, first, we got to get into some film news.
Hi! It's time for... What? It's time for... It's time for... Film news! Hi! It's time for... What? It's time for... It's time for... Film news! Film news!
All right, it's time for film news here on FilmBookCast, and we got a lot of stuff to get through because it's been a few weeks since our last episode of FilmBookCast. So I want to start off with this, probably my favorite news that we're going to talk about today.
Shrek 5, finally.
God damn it.
The day has come.
No,
my reckoning.
Not Shrek 5. Something even more ridiculous than Shrek 5 is happening, Mike. It's a little movie called XXX4.
What? Why isn't it Quadruple X?
You make a good point. Quadruple X, Triple X4, whatever it ends up being called. It's officially happening. Vin Diesel is back as Xander Cage, and DJ Caruso returns to direct. He directed the third one, Return of Xander Cage, which came out last year, and I was a big fan of. I was a big fan of Triple X3. I didn't expect to be. I didn't want this for myself. I watched those first two Triple X movies, and I thought the first one was okay. And I thought the second one was legit garbage. And then this third one comes along, and it's fucking insane. It's one of the most balls-out, insane action movies released over the past couple of years. And I want more of that, please, very much. So XXX4 officially happening with Vin Diesel, and presumably a lot of the cast from XXX3 will probably come back, because they kind of set that one up as a Fast and Furious successor, almost. Like, it could be Vin Diesel's new vanity project.
Sure.
And so, like, the Hound is in XXX3 from Game of Thrones, and... I forgot the actor's name for a second, but I'm still forgetting it. So he's the Hound.
Yeah.
Ruby Rose is in it. Donnie Yen is in XXX3, and he is fucking kicking so much ass. Samuel L. Jackson from the first two movies, also in XXX3. He's only in a little bit of it. Maybe he can pop up in more. Ice Cube could come back with a more substantial role in this movie. Like, who knows what could happen, man? The XXX universe is strong. And
the Xanderverse.
The Xanderverse is in a strong place right now, and I'm pretty stoked about that. And since we're talking about Vin Diesel news, we might as well jump to some Vin Diesel adjacent news, Mike, because as you know, The Fast and the Furious is a franchise that Vin Diesel stars in.
Go on.
You may also know that The Rock and Jason Statham have become very popular characters in these Fast and the Furious movies.
Do you mean Dwayne The Rock Johnson?
Yes, I mean Dwayne The Rock / the Tooth Fairy Johnson.
Got it. Okay.
Yeah, they have been, pretty popular characters in the last couple of Fast and Furious movies. So it's only natural that they would want to make a spinoff of the Fast and Furious movies focused on those characters. And that's exactly what they're doing. We've talked about this in the podcast before, but now we know who's going to direct that movie, Mike, and it's a pretty exciting name. David Leitch will be making this Fast and Furious spinoff, which is currently called Hobbs and Shaw. Now, David Leitch, why are you laughing? That's not a terrible name. Why are you laughing at that?
It's just not what I was expecting. I don't know.
What were you expect? I mean, granted, the Fast and Furious movies are usually pretty creative with their titles. And this isn't. This isn't that.
Fast and the Furious 9, Hobbs and Shaw 1, First Blood Part 3.
Well, now I'm disappointed it's not called that.
Damn.
But so David Leitch is the co-director of the original John Wick, and then he moved on to direct Atomic Blonde, and he's currently coming out with Deadpool 2, which hits theaters next month. And so I'm a big fan of where this guy's career is going. I'm really happy that Chad Stahelski and David Leitch directed John Wick together. And then I feel like we've gotten the best of both worlds now, where one of them has gone off to, amplify other blockbusters. And Chad Stahelski is holding down the fort and just keep making kick-ass John Wick movies. Like it feels like the best of both worlds we've got right now.
Yeah, things are just doing okay.
Yeah, so that's pretty cool. So David Leitch is making a Fast and Furious spinoff for The Rock and Statham, and that's awesome because, I mean, his fight scenes are incredible. Like, we haven't seen Deadpool 2 yet, but based on the trailers that have come out, the action in Deadpool 2 looks so much more interesting and inventive than Deadpool 1. Not to throw Tim Miller under the bus. I know I throw Tim Miller under the bus a lot on this podcast.
Friend of the show, Tim Miller.
I think he would be an enemy of the show at this point. A mortal enemy of the FilmBookCast, Tim Miller. No, he's fine, but I think David Leitch is a much more interesting action director. John Wick, obviously, awesome. Mm-hmm. And Atomic Blonde, I don't think was great, but it had some really incredible action set pieces. So I'm really excited to see what he does with Deadpool 2, and I'm really excited to see an action movie directed by him, starring two of our greatest action stars working today, The Rock and Jason Statham. And I mean, we've talked about this in the past. The Fast and Furious feud still seems to be going strong. So this could be the new vehicle for The Rock and Statham. Like, they might not be in the main series anymore.
Yeah, I think I would honestly be okay if Fast and the Furious proper as a franchise just kind of petered out and went away, and we just get Hobbs and Shaw, replaced with this, and then the Xanderverse. Like, if that's the world we have to live in, then so be it.
I think that might be what ends up happening. I don't think Fast and Furious will just peter out and go away. I mean, they're obviously working on Fast and Furious 9 with Justin Lin back as director for that. I think they're planning on doing a 9 and 10 and then wrapping it up from there. But then having this Hobbs and Shaw spinoff kind of turn it to its own series. Which could supplant the Fast and Furious series. I mean, 10 movies is a good run.
That's out of control, yeah. And they all make every dollar.
Exactly. These are some of the most popular movies going around, so they want to keep this franchise going as much as they possibly can. But obviously, you can't keep that cast around forever. Yeah. And because of the increasing egos between a lot of its actors, Vin Diesel, The Rock, and Jason Statham, and Tyrese Gibson, and everybody seems to be feuding on these movies.
Yeah.
And so it makes sense that, like, since Vin Diesel and The Rock hate each other, they don't want to make movies together anymore. And if you even watch Fate of the Furious, like, they don't share a single scene together. They don't share a frame together. If there is a scene between the two of them, like, they're never seen in the same shot. It's kind of distracting, actually, when you watch it.
Wow, yeah. I never thought of that. I would kind of actually be really okay if everyone just spins off. Like, if we get a Tyrese and Ludacris franchise, and we get this franchise, I'm down. Just shatter the Fast and the Furious into its own movies.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of what they accidentally did in the beginning of the series, right? They had that first movie, right? They had that first movie with Vin Diesel and Paul Walker and stuff. And then they had Too Fast, Too Furious, which was just on Paul Walker and Tyrese Gibson and Ludacris. Right. And then they had that third movie, which was Tokyo Drift, which was just some fucking other thing that was going on. They introduced Han, and then in Fast and Furious 4, it was back to Vin Diesel and Paul Walker, and then Fast 5 brought them all back, brought all these characters from all these different. Fast 5 was the Avengers of Fast and Furious movies before the Avengers had even come out. Fast and Furious had already done it.
Yeah, you're right.
It happened.
The Avengers, the MCU is a sham.
Fast and Furious figured out the Marvel Cinematic Universe a year before Marvel did. It's kind of amazing. If you think about it. So yeah, the fact that they could be transitioning from these main movies into this Hobbs and Shaw universe, could be cool. I mean, I do kind of hope it's called something else, just because I don't think. Like, I think people are attached to the actors who play these characters. I don't necessarily think they're attached to the characters themselves. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's not even a little bit.
So, like, calling it Hobbs and Shaw is like, you might as well just call it Rock and Statham. Like,
Actually,
that's what you're selling. That is the movie right there.
Yeah, you're not wrong.
But anyway, yes. So I think we spent way too much time talking about this Fast and Furious movie, as we always do. Or sorry, as I always do when we get into Fast and Furious.
Let's move on to our shortest topic, Marvel news.
Actually, Mike, this is DC news
All right,
that we're talking about right now. So we got a couple of DC projects that were recently announced. One of them was recently announced. One of them has been in the works for a little while, but finally has a director. Harley Quinn, breakout character of Suicide Squad, Margot Robbie, fantastic actress who played her, and Harley Quinn, one of the most popular characters in pop culture, I think, full stop at this point. Like, or at least in superhero culture. Like, she, to me, is right up there with Deadpool in terms of internet notoriety before these movies came out. And so, obviously, DC wants to make a Harley Quinn movie. Like, that's just, it feels like a no-brainer to me. That they would want that. But DC also wants to make 25 other movies, and they don't know what they're doing. So,
and it's a dumpster fire. So
it is a dumpster fire. But it seems like this Harley Quinn movie has become one step closer to reality. They've attached a director, Kathy Yan, who with this hire becomes the first Asian female director to helm a DC or to helm a superhero movie in general. Which is kind of cool. But so Margot Robbie is still attached to play Harley Quinn. And what's weird about this news is that it, like in the press release, it kind of implied that the sequel to Suicide Squad was no longer happening.
Okay.
Which I'm okay with. That's fine.
Yeah, sure.
I mean, it's just the way it's just oddly worded, but there are like 4 or 5 different movies that could star Harley Quinn that they were working on that are kind of in different stages of development. So, like, the Suicide Squad 2 is one of them. There's supposed to be like a Joker and Harley movie. There's a Gotham City Sirens thing, and this one, from what I understand, is going to be based on the Birds of Prey comics. Which is a team that does not involve Harley Quinn, so it's a great successor to Suicide Squad.
Interesting.
And I don't know, man. I mean, I think what I like about this, I mean, Margot Robbie apparently was pushing for a female director, and I like that about this because I think with the Harley Quinn character, it's very easy to get male gazy surrounding that character, which we saw very much in Suicide Squad. And it's even like if you watch somebody posted some side-by-side comparisons of scenes from Wonder Woman versus scenes from Justice League, where Wonder Woman was directed by Patty Jenkins in her movie and then directed by Zack Snyder / Joss Whedon in Justice League. And the difference is like night and day. Like it's actually like really remarkable. So the fact they have a female director for a Harley Quinn movie, probably a good move. And and it seems like they want to move pretty quickly on this movie. Apparently what's going to happen, Margot Robbie has been cast in Quentin Tarantino's new movie, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, which I don't know if we ever talked about the title of that movie. That's the most Quentin Tarantino title of any movie that's ever been made.
Yeah.
So Margot Robbie is playing Sharon Tate in Quentin Tarantino's Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, and so she's filming that later this year, and then production for this movie is set to happen right after she's done filming that. So towards the end of 2018, they're going to start filming this movie apparently. So it seems like this could be on track to actually be happening, which is more than you can say for most DC movies.
Yeah. We'll see what happens when we get there.
Yeah, definitely. So for sure, what we know for sure right now is that Aquaman exists. We know that Shazam exists. That's happening in early 2019. That's already been filming. Okay. And Wonder Woman 2 will definitely happen as well. There's no way that doesn't happen. I think it's supposed to hit the end of 2019. So I could see this Harley Quinn movie hitting in 2020. Definitely, but we'll see what happens. But speaking of DC projects that probably won't actually happen, another pretty big DC movie was announced the other day, and the reason I wouldn't call it a big DC movie except for the fact that the person that got to direct it is pretty major. Steven Spielberg, Mike.
Wow.
Yeah, has been attached to make a movie called Black Hawk, based on the Black Hawk comics. And I'm guessing you don't know what that is, because I didn't know what that is.
Enlighten us, Mike.
So Black Hawk Comics, I guess it was a comic that started in 1941, something like that, and it was acquired by DC in the 50s. But it's about a group of pilots fighting in World War II. And that's
So it's just a Spielberg movie.
Yeah, I was going to say, Steven Spielberg wants to make a World War II movie? Shocker!
What?
But, yeah, so this isn't really a superhero movie. This is just like, I guess, a comic that DC has in its wheelhouse, like that it owns, I guess.
Yeah.
And because DC is owned by WB, and WB put out Ready Player One, they have this working relationship with Spielberg at this point. He got himself attached to this. Do I think this movie happens? If Spielberg wants it to happen, it'll happen.
Yeah,
that's basically
the clout of Spielberg. Is if he wants it, it's gonna happen.
Yeah, so it depends on his timeline because he's working on West Side Story and Indiana Jones 5 right now.
Right.
But it's interesting that he's kind of moving back into the blockbuster territory of his career. So for a long stretch, he's been just making the prestige dramas that Spielberg has been doing over the past decade or so, and he's been great at it. But and I'll talk about Ready Player One a little bit in my discussions as well. But I love Spielberg. I'm always down to see a new Spielberg thing. So the more projects that he's working on, the better, as far as I'm concerned. And he's already proven multiple times that he knows how to make a dope World War II movie. So.
I don't know, man. I mean, if we can trust him to make a World War II movie, Mike, I don't know. I'm not sure. I'm not sold on it.
You're not sold. You're not sold on Saving Private Ryan or Band of Brothers or.
At least those two.
At least those two things. I mean, he also made Schindler's List, which is World War II adjacent.
Yeah,
for sure.
Did he also?
War Horse, which World War I movie.
True. Did he produce the Pacific or something like that? Right?
I believe he did. Yeah. Pacific. He produced Band of Brothers in the Pacific. I think he also produced Generation Kill. He did a lot of the HBO World War II stuff.
Yeah.
And obviously all his. He's a big historical drama guy. I guess we should broaden the umbrella outside of World War II, because I feel like he gets the World War II reputation mostly for the HBO stuff, which he mostly just produced.
Yeah.
But still, Spielberg World War II, I'm down. That's all you need to say. It's.
That's I would be kind of really down if this happens.
Yeah, no, I would be into that, and Spielberg working on something for DC Comics is kind of interesting. So
yeah,
definitely looking forward to that. And then I got some other news, Mike, about a director returning to a subject that he has done in the past.
Really?
This is my segue for the day. Colin Trevorrow is coming back to Jurassic World.
Moving on. Okay, great.
Yeah, so Jurassic World 3 will be directed by Colin Trevorrow. So he did not direct the new one, Jurassic World Fallen Kingdom. That was directed by J.A. Bayona, although Colin Trevorrow and his writing partner Derek Connolly did write this movie.
Okay.
But he will be coming back to finish what he started, I guess. He is J.J. Abramsing the Jurassic World series. Yeah, I don't know, man. I think I'm curious. You've seen the first trailer for Jurassic World 2, right?
Yes.
Okay, have you seen the newest one? The one that just came out, the other day?
Probably not.
Okay. I will tell you, the first trailer I thought was pretty dumb.
Yeah.
I was not into it. This new trailer is selling a movie that I kind of want to see.
You son of a bitch. I thought I could trust you, Mike.
I know. I know. But I know you're a big fan of The Lost World, and this looks like The Lost World on steroids.
Oh, okay. I'm probably in then.
The dinosaurs are gonna. It seems like the dinosaurs are gonna be on human territory in some of this movie.
Oh my god! What?
Yeah. So I'm kind of into it, and I hate that I'm kind of into it. But who knows? Maybe J.A. Bayona has. I think he is actually a solid director. He might have a better eye for this thing than Trevorrow does. But we'll see. J.A. Bayona could be the Rian Johnson of Jurassic World. To Colin Trevorrow's J.J. Abrams.
Yeah.
Although J.J. Abrams is a much more talented filmmaker than Colin Trevorrow. Hence why J.J. Abrams took over for Colin Trevorrow.
Yeah, good point. I forgot about that.
Really? That was that's the big thing.
Yeah.
I was very curious to see what Colin Trevorrow would do actually after he got kicked off of episode 9. And I was a little bit surprised that he got to come back to Jurassic World. But I guess since Jurassic World 1 made, $1.5 billion.
Yeah. Go ahead, make another one.
Yeah. Had one of the biggest opening weekends of all. I think the biggest opening weekend of all time at that time, right?
I think so. Yeah,
something insane. It was $500 million in open. It was nuts. But yeah, so Jurassic World 3 gonna happen at some point. Jurassic World Fallen Kingdom comes out in June, I think, and that new trailer kind of really I was into. I mean, they're still trying to make it seem like Jeff Goldblum is in more of the movie than I think he actually is.
Oh yeah, he's definitely only in that one scene.
He's definitely in that one scene where they get him to say "life finds a way," and then he can leave. Basically,
yeah. Here's your check, sir. Thank you.
These creatures were here before us, and if we're not careful, they're gonna be here after. Welcome to Jurassic World.
Which is a bummer, because like, why wouldn't you, like, if you can get Jeff Goldblum for a Jurassic Park movie, why not have him like in your main cast? Like, it just seems illogical to me that would be the case. But anyway, that is Colin Trevorrow coming back to the Jurassic World franchise, and I also want to talk about this other story that's been brewing. Mike, this is probably the biggest news over the past few weeks. The Cannes Film Festival is coming up. The recent lineup of films was just announced for that. There's some interesting stuff that should be premiering. What's not premiering is anything on Netflix.
Whoops.
Yeah, so Netflix was at the Cannes Film Festival last year. They had a couple of movies screening at Cannes. They screened Okja, and they screened the Meyerowitz stories there. And this year, they were planning on coming back, and they were planning on putting out 5 movies in the Cannes Film Festival this year, including the new ones from Alfonso Cuarón and Paul Greengrass, which I had no idea Cuarón's new movie was going to Netflix.
Yeah,
like,
what? Hold on.
Like, that's insane to me. But I know it's probably... we talked about what that movie was a while back. It was like a small-time, like, Mexican family drama that takes place in the 50s. So it sort of makes sense, because I doubt... there's a ton of like if at best it would have been like a limited release theatrically.
Yeah.
Like it does not have the like. I was a little surprised, because I was like, Alfonso, like Gravity was such a huge hit. How's Cuarón going straight to Netflix for his next one? But it like based on the subject matter, like I get it. It makes sense.
Yeah.
But anyway, so there's a big feud going on between the Cannes Film Festival and Netflix. Cannes recently put out that they want the movies played at the festival to actually be screened in theaters when they were distributed to people, and Netflix doesn't care about that. So. Like they have a steadfast refusal to put their movies in theaters. So basically, they're not allowed to be at the Cannes Film Festival anymore. That's basically the end of it.
Yeah, this is real weird. I feel like it sort of like fits into the reputation of Cannes, right? It's always been that kind of. I don't know how to put it, like stuck up film festival in some weird. Although like some crazy shit really happens there, or gets released, right? But I'm not really surprised that one of the leading, the great beacon on the hill of film culture is going to be like poo-poo on Netflix.
Right.
But whatever.
I mean, I get that. I mean, I feel like, I think both sides here are sort of in the wrong. And
yeah,
I think both of them, I think, are doing good things. Like I think Cannes is in the right in the fact that I want movies screened in theaters. Like Netflix has this steadfast refusal to screen their movies in theaters, and there is some stuff they're putting out that I really would want to see in the big screen. Like I don't want to watch it on my tablet at home. Like if I could have seen Okja in the theater, I would have gone to the theater, because it would have been incredible to see that movie in the theater. And I had to watch it, on my TV at my house, and like it was cool and stuff. But I had to pause it every few minutes because my dog was barking, and like there's
there's stuff happening.
There are distractions in the home that you don't get in the theater, or you shouldn't get in the theater if you have like a decent audience with you. At the same time, Netflix has revolutionized the film industry essentially. With their instant streaming service, and they are in the right on that front too. Like their movies have never been more available to people than they are right now. And
right.
I think that's great. That's an awesome thing, and Netflix certainly pioneered that. That's not really where they stand now. They're not really into the give everybody movies all the time. Like they're mostly doing their own original content now.
Yeah.
And that's fine. Like they're putting out a lot of stuff. Like
yeah,
we've talked about it in the past. It's basically like every Friday there's a new Netflix TV show or movie out. And I can't keep up with that anymore. I don't know most of the stuff that Netflix puts out now. Like I can just find the stuff that is geared directly towards me. And that's basically like, I go by what the algorithm tells me to go to.
That's
or like,
right.
and which is what they want. They want you to go by the algorithm. But so I think, Netflix has certainly done a lot of great things. And so is the Cannes Film Festival. And I think they both have good philosophies that are just completely at odds with each other. This is the Captain America Civil War.
Oh, my God. You're not wrong, though. Yeah, this is definitely two major entities just burying their heads in the sand and refusing to acknowledge things.
So we'll see what happens in the future. I think eventually the Cannes Film Festival will have to lie down. I think Netflix has become too big, and too many filmmakers are going to Netflix now for Cannes to just ignore that.
Yeah.
Because that's the thing. Like, Netflix will fund anyone. And, like, they've got Alfonso Cuarón and Paul Greengrass making movies for them. Jeremy Saulnier's next movie is coming out on Netflix. And, I mean, they've got The Irishman. Martin Scorsese is making a movie for Netflix. Like, that's insane. I do think that The Irishman will probably come out in theaters. I think if Netflix is going to put out a movie in theaters, that will be the one.
That's the first one. Yeah.
It would have to, it would have to be. There's no, I feel like Scorsese would probably have that in his contract.
Yeah, that's true. When we get to the point where movies are just like directly uploaded into our brains, Cannes is going to have to give up. Like, they're going to have to back down on that. And like, I feel like that might not be too far out.
Yeah. So anyway, I wanted to bring that up because it is an interesting debate that's been going on in the film world. And finally, we got one last bit of film news, some recent deaths in the film world that I wanted to bring up. The first of which was Milos Forman, the film director who directed One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest and Amadeus. I mean, he was a fantastic film director. I mean, Cuckoo's Nest I saw my freshman year of college, I think, and it just I haven't watched it since, but it feels like it's seared into my brain. Like, I saw it that one time, it's just like completely stuck in my memory.
Billy, for Christ's sakes, you must be committed, right? No. Okay. I mean, you're just a young kid. What are you doing here? You ought to be out in a convertible, bird dogging chicks and banging beaver. What are you doing here, for Christ's sake? What's so funny about that? Well, Jesus, I mean, you guys do nothing but complain about how you can't stand it in this place here, and then you haven't got the guts just to walk out? I mean, what do you think you are, for Christ's sake? Crazy or something? Mm-hmm. Well, you're not. You're not. You're no crazier than the average asshole out walking around on the streets, and that's it. Jesus Christ, I can't even believe it.
Those are very challenging observations you made, Randall.
Yeah, here's a funny story.
Sure.
Colin, this is your fault. I still have not seen One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest because a group of my friends in college watched it, and then one of our dear listeners, Colin, came back and was like, man, that movie's crazy, that one part at the end when the thing happens. And I was like, well, guess that's it for that movie forever for me.
So you spoiled the ending of Cuckoo's Nest, essentially.
Yeah. So
that is unfortunate. Mm-hmm. You should watch it anyway. It's really good.
I've heard.
From your group of friends who spoiled it for you.
Yes.
So I wanted to give a shout out to Milos Forman because he was a really iconic film director, directed some of the best movies of all time. And then also Harry Anderson died. And Harry Anderson is a guy who was most well known for his role on the NBC show Night Court, which I didn't watch, so I can't really say anything about that. But I've mentioned before in this podcast, I've been watching a lot of Cheers over the past year and a half or two, and he played a phenomenal recurring character on Cheers, Harry the Hat, who is this con man character that pops into the bar once in a while and is like this grifter who Sam's at odds with a lot of the time.
That'll be $1. $1. Let's see. Gosh, I thought I had $1. Well, I got a 10. You got change? Absolutely. There you go. 5 and 4 ones.
Oh, look at this. I have $1 after all. I don't need the change, Coach. Why don't you give me my 10 back?
Right. Right. There you go.
There you go. Wait. No, Coach, I don't want to carry around all these bills. Listen, give me a 20 for the whole thing. What do you say?
You got it.
Nobody move. Come on, Coach. Don't you see what he's doing? I mean, he's shortchanging you.
Oh, no, Sam. He's outsmarted me before, but not this time. No way. Believe me.
Coach, how much money are you giving him?
$20.
How much is he giving you?
Oh, darn you, Harry.
I'm just trying to keep in practice. Coach, I tell you what. I'll give you a $30 bill. We'll call it even, okay?
What do you think, Sam?
There's no such thing as a $30 bill, Coach.
You want to bet?
Get out of my bar, Harry. Come on.
Wait a minute. You owe me $10. What is this, a clip joint?
I'm sorry. Here, now go on.
Sam, you got the wrong idea about me.
No, I don't. Now, Harry, you got 10 seconds to get out of my bar and give me back my watch, Harry.
He is really funny on that show, and I saw that Harry Anderson had died and that he played Harry the Hat on Cheers, and I got really sad. So just wanted to bring that up because I love Harry the Hat. And then finally, one last death in the film world, this is a pretty major one. Character actor R. Lee Ermey died recently, and R. Lee Ermey is a guy who you may not know the name, but you know his voice.
Oh yeah, you do.
You know his voice. He played Sergeant Hartman in Full Metal Jacket. He is essentially the definitive cinematic drill sergeant. Anytime there's a movie involving the military or the Army or the Marines or anything, R. Lee Ermey is the guy who is probably in that movie.
Yep.
I am Gunnery Sergeant Hartman, your senior drill instructor. From now on, you will speak only when spoken to. And the first and last words out of your filthy sewers will be, sir. Do you maggots understand that? Sir, yes, sir. Bullshit, I can't hear you. Sound off like you got a pair. Sir, yes, sir. If you ladies leave my island, if you survive recruit training, you will be a weapon. You will be a minister of death praying for war. But until that day, you are pukes. You are the lowest form of life on earth. You are not even human fucking beings. You are nothing but unorganized, grabastic pieces of amphibian shit. Because I am hard, you will not like me. But the more you hate me, the more you will learn. I am hard, but I am fair. There is no racial bigotry here. I do not look down on niggers, kites, wops, or greasers. Here you are all equally worthless. And my orders are to weed out all non-hackers who do not pack the gear to serve in my beloved corps. Do you maggots understand that? Sir, yes, sir. Bullshit, I can't hear you. Sir, yes, sir.
I also, I love his role as the police chief, I think, in 7.
Yes, yeah, he is the police chief in 7. He has a great line in that movie, too, where he picks up a phone and he's like, this is even my desk, and hangs it up again.
Yeah.
But yeah, he's in 7, he's in Full Metal Jacket, he was in Toy Story also, he played the Sarge in Toy Story.
Yep.
You know, he's somebody who was iconic for essentially playing one role his entire career, but playing it so well. Like,
and it was
fantastic.
just himself, because he was an actual drill sergeant.
Yeah, he was basically just playing, because he started out as an actual drill sergeant in the Marines. Like, that was his career before he was an actor.
Yep.
And then just spent like the last 30-40 years just being the same guy on screen, and it was pretty great to watch all the time. So R.I.P. R. Lee Ermey. Army movies aren't going to be the same, I think, without him.
Yeah, I agree.
All right, and I think that wraps up our film news today, Mike. Let's move on into our discussions.
Watch this. These are my discussions. Just when I thought I said all I could say, my buddy and I talk about movies we see. These are my discussions. There is so much to see, you and me. So we're gonna talk about movies for our discussions.
All right, it's time for our discussions here on FilmBookCast. Mike, what do you have to discuss with us today?
Today I have 2 things. The first is a relatively new-ish Netflix documentary series that came out a couple weeks ago called Wild Wild Country.
Our vision was to create a community
based on compassion and sharing.
Book One's agenda was simply to raise the consciousness of humanity. That was his goal.
America was land of promise. It was my conviction we will have no problems.
I don't think America has a place for these people.
Now, is this screening at the Cannes Film Festival?
Well, I regret to inform you, actually. But this is a 6-part documentary series that focuses on a, I guess, cult at this point. We can just say that.
Okay.
They were called the Rajneeshi, I think. And they were a kind of new age 60s, 70s guru from India, garners this huge following, and he wants to create his own city, and he purchases like 80,000 acres or something that's like, I can't even imagine what that is, in Oregon, and moves in with his hundreds of followers into a town. Technically, the property was in a town with a population of 40. So you can imagine there's some backlash from those 40 pensioners. And it's just about the drama that goes down and the crazy federal court case and investigation and all this wild shit that's happening out there. It's 6 episodes, and the first episode or 2, and I was kind of like just interested in what was going on. Not much has happened yet. It's a lot of setup, a lot of just describing the opposite sides and everything, and then I think it's either the end of episode 3 or the end of episode 2. I can't remember which one drops the And then the thing happened, and you're like, what? And I just had to watch all of them like the next day.
Yeah.
And it's wild. I think the Duplass brothers produced it.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah. So it also, I think, does a really impressive job of remaining fairly objective. You know, a lot of times there's a lot, you know, clearly there's a wrong side in these kinds of documentary series like this. But they managed to have interviews with the townspeople and the people that kind of, you know, rose up against the Rajneeshi population or whatever is going on there. They have members of the different factions that appeared within the cult or group. So there's a lot, you know, you get a lot of sides of the story that's going on, which I thought was actually really interesting, considering, you know, a lot of times with these types of series, there's clearly a right and wrong. The second thing I have to discuss is a movie called Les Samurai. And this...
Okay, yeah. I've heard of this movie before. It's been on my list to see for a while. Tell us about it, Mike. Les Samurai?
Les Samurai, yeah. This is a 1967 French, I guess, gangster movie, you could call it, in some sense. Directed by Jean-Pierre Melville and starring Alain Delon, which I didn't recognize anything else in their filmographies, but they both had very long French cinema careers. So
yeah,
good for them, I guess. And this is available on FilmStruck. I watched it on FilmStruck, so it's the Criterion cut or version of it. And this is basically it's effectively a gangster movie, but it's set in 1967 France, and it's in Paris, and it's got that really crisp, like, you know, really straight suits with the felt hats and cool jazz music, and it's just really the silent protagonist, and it's about a contract killer who gets caught in between his employer and the police, and this kind of drama of who's going to get him first, and his cat and mouse game going on. But it kind of evokes a lot of, it's called Les Samurai, so it evokes a lot of that kind of, lone warrior. It's that kind of story. It starts with a quote that says, "There's no life more solitary than that of a samurai, except that of a tiger in the jungle," or some crazy shit. I don't know. It's pretty wild.
Yeah.
But if you, I know we're both into those kind of, lone wolf and cub kind of wandering warrior movies.
Definitely, yeah.
But it's not that kind of pulpy grindhouse version that those movies are. But yeah, it's really tense and slow and plotting, but in a really interesting way. There's an awesome, I hesitate to call it a chase scene, because the main character is being surveilled by the police across Paris, and he's in the metro. And the police chief tells the police or whatever, when you see him, click this button so we can see figure out where you are, like a locator kind of thing. And we just keep cutting to scenes in the police station of this huge map of the Paris subway with all these lights, with the lights of the police clicking on their locators and stuff. So I don't know, it's really cool. There's some really tense stuff going on in there. So yeah, definitely recommend Les Samurai if you can get it.
Cool. Yeah, it's available on FilmStruck right now, and again, it's been on my list for so long. It's actually one of the movies. I have a Flick Chart, which I've told you about Flick Chart, right? That's a movie ranking website. Based on the movies that you rank, there's a massive list of like thousands and thousands of movies that have just been ranked by all the users, and it kind of generates a list of shame for you that you like movies that you haven't seen, and Les Samurai is one of the movies on mine. So it's been on my list for quite a while. So I'm definitely gonna watch that at some point. And I have a bunch of recent movies to talk about today. Basically every movie that we could have reviewed for this podcast, if one of us had seen any of them.
Look, you can't keep putting me on blast like this, Mike.
No, it's fine. It's totally fine, Mike. It's totally fine. That said, I really wish we could have done like a full review of the first movie I'm going to talk about, because it is one that I think has a lot of interesting stuff going on, and that is Ready Player One.
My name's Wade Watts. My dad picked that name because it sounded like a superhero's alter ego, like Peter Parker or Bruce Banner. But he died when I was a kid. My mom, too. And I ended up here. Sitting here in my tiny corner of nowhere. There's nowhere left to go. Nowhere. Except the Oasis.
A new movie directed by Steven Spielberg. And there is a really interesting movie hiding on the sidelines of Ready Player One. This is essentially Spielberg looking upon his works, ye mighty, and despairing. This is based on the book by Ernest Cline, and it's about a kid in this dystopian future who is part of this like in the future, everybody plays this VR game called The Oasis, and it's just like this mishmash of pop culture and stuff like that. What I think the movie does really smartly is that it's not about the pop culture like the book is. This more treats it like a Who Framed Roger Rabbit-esque situation where the pop culture is like set dressing. And that was exactly what I was hoping for out of the movie. When I read the first 10 pages of the book and had to put it down because I was gonna fucking throw it at something. I hated it.
Wow.
I hated those first 10 pages and couldn't read any more. But I think Spielberg really improves upon, based on me having only read 10 pages, I think he really does improve upon the source material that I read. I know you liked the book, right? Like you enjoyed, you actually read the whole thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, and that's fine. Like I think the book is for some people. But to me, those first 10 pages at least just felt like it was just name checking a bunch of things in pop culture without actually like delivering a character or like story. And I was like, this is gonna be the whole book, isn't it? And like,
you're not wrong.
The reason I read those first 10 pages, I was dating somebody at the time who read the book and loved it and gave it to me and was like, hey, you'll like this. You're nerdy. And and I was like, thanks.
Sick.
Yeah, I think this movie does a lot with the premise that the book doesn't, and I think it kind of streamlines a lot of stuff and kind of expands its reach from just 80s pop culture into just like a pop culture in general type thing, which is, I think, a little more interesting because 80s pop culture has been done to death at this point. And so, yeah, and there's still a lot of stuff where it's like, hey, you're in the suit from Buckaroo Banzai, good for you. And it's like, that's actual dialogue from the movie and stuff like that. So that's like a little cringy, but like, it's there's some interesting stuff going on here, particularly with the Mark Rylance character. Who feels like an analog for Spielberg himself. Mark Rylance plays this guy who created the Oasis, and the plot of the movie is that he dies like 5 years earlier, but he basically sets off this like Willy Wonka-esque quest where like people have to get these like 3 keys, and then whoever gets the keys unlock the Oasis, and they become in charge of it, kind of thing.
Yeah,
and that's what everybody in the Oasis is trying to do. And so Ty Sheridan plays the main kid. Olivia Cooke plays his love interest. The girl from Master of None, whose name I'm blanking on right now, but she won an Emmy for writing an episode of Master of None, and she's great. And I just can't remember what her name is right now, and I don't know why. But she's in this, and T.J. Miller also in this, which a little weird now.
Awkward.
Ben Mendelsohn. This was pre-bomb threat. T.J. Miller.
Yeah.
Throwing that out there. Post-sexual harassment allegation, but pre-bomb threat, T.J. Miller. So there's that. Ben Mendelsohn is the villain of this movie, and he's some fun. But I think Mark Rylance is really giving the performance that anchors this entire movie, where he really feels like an analog for Spielberg himself, just being kind of sad at, like, he's looking upon this vision that he created. Like, Spielberg essentially created blockbuster cinema himself. He and George Lucas working in tandem. And now and it's almost like him looking back on the industry and being like, I don't know if I like this anymore.
It's all the same shit a second time.
Exactly. And there's this little undercurrent of being slightly critical of just being obsessed with pop culture and stuff like that and having no outside interests other than that. And that was more interesting to me than that, but it doesn't really delve into that as much as it should. But while there's the VR stuff and the Oasis and some of that is a lot of fun, it does feel like there's this like undercurrent like melancholy that I really would have liked to see explored more. That said, as far as blockbuster spectacle goes, there is one sequence about halfway through this movie that is just flat out fantastic and worth seeing the movie on the big screen for. Like, if just for that sequence, it's probably like 10 minutes long in like a 2.5 hour movie. But that 10-minute sequence is worth everything that this movie gives you. And it's like I feel like I want to describe it. I want to talk about it, which is why I wish we could do like a full review of this. Because if I talk about it, it will be like the sense of discovery that I had watching that sequence when I realized what they were about to do. I was like, oh my God. Wow. And you get to see Spielberg play in a sandbox that he hasn't really done before. And what I do like about this movie, I mean, Spielberg is somebody who is just such a great... he could direct this movie in his sleep, I think. And I think at some points it kind of seems like he is. But I think what fascinates me about Ready Player One is also what fascinated me about The Adventures of Tintin, which is a movie that I love. I love Tintin. I think that movie's fucking great. And Spielberg's a guy who has worked in film for most of his career. But with Tintin, obviously that was an animated movie and he had to work with digital technology. And so with Tintin, what he did was he was like, well, I'm working with a camera that can defy the laws of physics. so I'm going to have it defy the laws of physics. And so he uses digital technology to make his camera do impossible things, and he does the same thing in Ready Player One. And I think that's a blast to watch because you can tell he's having a blast while he's making it, which I think is kind of cool. So yeah, I think it's about as good a movie as I could have hoped for based on the source material. At the same time, I wonder, I think Steven Spielberg does a solid job here. I really wonder what a director like Joe Dante could have done with this, or if this was made in the 80s and Robert Zemeckis got a hold of it, that would be wild. Or even or if Edgar Wright got a hold of this. Can you imagine what Edgar Wright's Ready Player One could look like, Mike? It would be insane.
That's too much to think about, Mike. I can't handle that.
But anyway, yeah, so that is Ready Player One. It is still out in theaters right now, and I enjoyed it. I think it's a fun time. It's nowhere near Spielberg's best work, and it feels like kind of a rehash of a lot of other things, but that's kind of by design, almost. And it's also the only movie where you get to watch Iron Giant fight a Gundam, so it has that going for it, too.
That's the main thrust of the book, is that.
Yeah, so there is that. I mean, I did see a lot of criticism for the movie, based on people who love the Iron Giant, actually, because the main plot of the Iron Giant is that he is not a gun, right? He's trying not to be a weapon, and the Iron Giant's usage in this movie is solely as a weapon. But I feel like I was okay with that. I mean, I love the Iron Giant's a way better movie than Ready Player One, but I feel like I was okay with the usage of the Iron Giant in this movie because he's a video game avatar, essentially. That's basically it. All these characters are video game avatars. They're not the actual characters, and so I feel like I had a lot more leeway with what these characters were doing, because it's they wouldn't be doing the normal things these characters would be doing, because they're not. That isn't Beetlejuice. That's just some guy pretending to be Beetlejuice.
That's that guy's version of what he thinks Beetlejuice might be. That's all.
That's it. Whoever was the person who was piloting that Iron Giant avatar probably missed the memo about the Iron Giant. But that's fine.
But that's not the
probably
point.
missed the point of that movie. Even then, can you? I don't think any of these characters in this movie actually watched the movies that they were playing in the video game.
No,
because when would they have time to watch them? They're playing this game all the time.
I think you're hung up a little too much on it, Mike.
I don't know. I don't think. I was reading one review where it's I think it was David Ehrlich's review, who was talking about. There's a bit in the movie where. Actually, I really hated this part of the movie too. Actually, where Ty Sheridan is talking to Ben Mendelsohn. Ben Mendelsohn's the villain, and he's like this corporate guy who's trying to take over the Oasis so he can make money off of it. Where Ty Sheridan is kind of like the the rebellious kid who's trying to win the Oasis for mankind and humanity. It's basically this movie is actually a very unsubtle allegory for net neutrality. If you think about it, but Ben Mendelsohn and Ty Sheridan are meeting up, and Ben Mendelsohn's trying to get Ty Sheridan to trust him, and he's trying to seem like a cool guy who knows pop culture and stuff like that. And he starts quizzing him on John Hughes movies, and it's what high school was into all the John Hughes movies, Ridgemont or Faber? And Ben Mendelsohn has a guy in his earpiece telling him all the different pop culture things. It's that's a trick question. Ridgemont High is from Fast Times at Ridgemont High, and Faber's from Animal House. And so Ben Mendelsohn's Ridgemont and Faber weren't in John Hughes, man. That was, and it was this dude trying way too hard to be cool, which is kind of funny. But it just feels there's a line after that where Ty Sheridan's yelling at him, a fanboy can always tell a hater and stuff like that. And it's I don't know.
Rough. Not great.
It just feels lame. It's a movie. It feels weird to have a Spielberg movie that references Twitch streams. Is all.
Yeah. Real weird.
But anyway, that is Ready Player One, and I do have a lot of other movies to get into, so I'll talk about those now, because I could talk about Ready Player One for a while, but I'll spare you. I'll spare you on that one because you haven't even seen it yet. So.
You'll save it for the Ready Player One fan cast we're going to do.
The fan cast. I think that would be a very strong word for what Ready Player One my feelings are. I also saw The Death of Stalin recently, Mike, and this is the new movie directed by Armando Iannucci.
Smell like rendered horse, you burning asshole.
God! You will not take me down!
You then have to report this conversation, threatening to do harm or obstruct any member of the Presidium in the process of looking at your fucking face. Fuck. Fuck Germany. I think I can take a flesh lump in a fucking waistcoat.
Creator of The Thick of It and Veep, also directed a movie called In the Loop a few years back, which is awesome. This is essentially if Veep were set in 1950s Russia and were a lot more grim. This is have you heard of this movie at all, Mike?
I have heard of the title.
You get a quizzical look. So
yeah, no, I had heard of it, but I don't know anything about it.
Okay, so yeah, this is actually, it takes place in 1950s Russia as the death of Joseph Stalin happens, and the power struggle between all the different Russian political figures that emerges in the wake of that. And so you have Khrushchev, you have Molotov, and all these characters. Steve Buscemi's in it. Jeffrey Tambor is in it. And I really enjoyed this movie. I thought it was a lot of fun. It's also incredibly dark, just like a ridiculously dark comedy, almost too dark. Like it's
wow.
It really straddles the line, and I love dark comedy. Mike, you know I do.
Yeah. I'm very familiar with that.
Yeah, but it is, it's a really insane movie, and there are long stretches that like aren't that funny. There's not that, but it doesn't seem like it's attempting to be. It just seems like it's a political thriller almost. But then bits of it that are just hilarious. I loved everything with Stalin's son. I loved everything. There's a bit at the beginning with Patty Considine, who plays this radio broadcaster who's putting out a concert on the radio, and then Stalin requests a recording of the broadcast, and so he has to actually, like, in order to avoid dying, he has to corral the orchestra back together and get people in the audience and actually redo the entire broadcast because he wasn't recording it the first time.
Oh my god!
And it's this really funny like set piece, and it's really cool. And yeah, Steve Buscemi is fantastic in this movie too. It's just a lot of like really great Iannucci dialogue. Like I think that's his best trait that he has in all of his stuff, and it's well worth having here. It's funny, but in like a horrifying sort of way. So
yeah.
That is The Death of Stalin. Well worth checking out. I think it's a really interesting movie. I think it's also much more cinematic than anything Iannucci has done up to this point too. I mean, he's only directed one other movie, which was In the Loop, but In the Loop looks just like The Thick of It, with the TV show that it's kind of based on.
Right.
And so this feels like he's experimenting with a lot of new techniques that he hasn't really done in the past. So kind of cool to see. And then I also saw another comedy movie recently, Mike, and that's a movie called Blockers.
Yeah, great. What do they say?
Okay, so there's something about an eggplant handshake.
Eggplant agreement. Yeah, they got an agreement to make eggplant parmesan.
No, eggplants are dicks in teenage emoji language.
What?
Julie is making some kind of a dick-related agreement here. Kayla is in on the agreement.
No fucking way.
Okay, clown face. What the fuck does that mean?
That means she's down to clown.
Okay.
3 eggplants? And look at the drool coming out of that smiley face.
You wish that was drool. That's cum, my man.
Stand down.
It is. Look, it's cum. He's like,
This is sex if I've ever seen it illustrated in emoji form.
No. Maybe not. They're best friends. They're just saying, like, you're okay with me. You're okay to me. You're okay
you say that to your
me.
friends? Whenever I see my friends, I go, hey, you're okay with me.
I don't use these.
Hold on. Agreement hands. This is it's a sex agreement. They're making a sex pact. They're going to lose their virginity on prom night.
That cannot be a sex pact. That is friendship. And that is the bond of friendship that can never be broken.
I mean, maybe.
Yeah. Oh, look, they wrote Sex Pact 2018. I fucking knew it!
Okay, this is the new comedy directed by Kay Cannon, and it's about 3 parents who try to keep their daughters from having sex on their prom night. Surprisingly solid. I had a lot of fun with this movie, Mike.
Wow.
The parents in this movie are Ike Barinholtz, Leslie Mann, and John Cena. Very much here for the comedy career of John Cena, I will say. I think he's proven himself to be kind of the funniest part of a lot of the movies that he's been in. He was in Trainwreck, and he was really funny in that movie. He was in Sisters, and was very funny there. And this is kind of his first like big kind of starring comedy role. I think I'm pretty sure. And there's plenty of like big, broad, laugh out loud moments. All the daughters are actually really funny too. Like they have it's basically kind of split evenly between what the parents are doing and what the daughters are doing. And it's pretty funny on both fronts. It's also like a really progressive movie in terms of its attitudes surrounding sex and sexuality. And so there's a lot of good stuff here. Ike Barinholtz is like it's a very good ensemble cast going on here. Gary Cole shows up for a little bit, which was cool, and stuff like that. Kay Cannon's actually she wrote all of the Pitch Perfect movies, but this is her directorial debut. It's a strong one, so I'm eager to see what she does next. She also used to write for 30 Rock too. And then I have a few more to go into here, Mike. I have A Wrinkle in Time.
Call me Mrs. Whatsit. Mrs. Who? No, Mrs. Whatsit. Mrs. Who is... she's like a million years older and way more knowledgeable.
What can I do for you, Mrs. Whatsit?
I called her ceiling sheets. Guys, she's harmless.
You're 6. Come on. What do you know about harmless?
Have I ever been wrong?
Well, one of these days you might be Charles Wallace.
Oh, I highly doubt that. He's one of the greatest minds in recent history. He's prodigious. But of course, we can't take any credit for our talents. It's how we use them that counts.
Which is the new movie from director Ava DuVernay. who directed Selma and the documentary 13th, which came out on Netflix. And man, like I wish this movie were better.
Oh, that's so sad.
Yeah, I mean, there are some very cool and striking visuals in the second half of this movie. But for the most part, this is incredibly dull. I thought it was a really, really boring movie. It doesn't actually like start until about halfway through, which I found really annoying. And I read this book in like 7th grade. I don't remember anything about it. I feel like I remember there being some kind of flying unicorn.
Maybe? Okay. I was going to say, all I can remember is Turkish Delight, but that's actually Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe.
Yep. I feel like there was some kind of flying unicorn, at least maybe on the cover of the A Wrinkle in Time book that I read. I don't know.
That sounds familiar.
That sounds right. But there was no flying unicorn in this movie, so there's like
you had one thing.
The guy had to get right one thing. I don't even know it was actually in the books, but yeah, I think this is an incredibly dull movie. Yeah, like the first half is just like it's set up, but it's set up that doesn't do anything. There's nothing. It doesn't set up anything. Like there's nothing in that first half that it sets up gets paid off later. You know what I mean? It just kind of feels like it's meandering for a very long time. And most of its characters are completely insufferable. I think the 3 witch characters, Oprah Winfrey, Reese Witherspoon, and Mindy Kaling, are pretty annoying to hang out with. But also, it's a main trio of kids. The main kid, played by Storm Reed, she's fine. She's okay. She has the blandest love interest I've ever seen. Maybe not the blandest I've ever seen, but like a really bland dude love interest.
Classic.
There. And then her little brother, the character's name is Charles Wallace. Maybe the most annoying kid I've ever seen in a movie.
Wow.
Straight up. He is the worst. And as soon as he shows up on screen, he shows up in the first like 5 minutes, and he is infuriating. I hated everything about him. He is the most like precocious little one of those like playing like a really smart kid. Is like way smarter than everyone else.
Yeah.
But he like knows everything about the world that nobody else does. And he's like 5 years old. He has this really high pitched nasally voice, and he's really annoying. I hated everything about him. And then he has like this turn towards the end of the movie where he's a little more interesting, but at the same time, like he's still just real. Like I could, and you know, when he first showed up, my first thought was, well, maybe he won't be in that much of the movie. Maybe he's just like an ancillary brother character.
Oh no!
But he is pretty central to the movie's plot. So. He's rough. He's rough. Other stuff I did like. I mean, again, the visual stuff in the second half of the movie. There's some really cool, trippy stuff that Ava DuVernay gets in there. Chris Pine is pretty good in the movie. He's fun.
Right.
There's this one scene with Zach Galifianakis that just seems completely pointless to me. He's only in it for like one scene, and it's part of that like stuff where it's just like, oh, and now it's a lot of setup for no reason and that kind of thing. But yeah, A Wrinkle in Time is a movie that I was hoping good things for. I like Ava DuVernay. I was rooting for her. Selma was very good. And she, I think, is the first black female director to get a budget this size for a studio movie.
Yeah.
But it does not really work for me on like any level. And you sent me a text the other day that like almost scared me for a second. You're like, oh shit, Ava DuVernay taking over episode 9. And I was like, what? like I did like a double take when I saw that because I hadn't seen that, and I was like, I went to Twitter because I assumed that everybody would be talking about that on Twitter, and I couldn't find anything, and I was like, what is he talking about? Like, and then I checked out Ava DuVernay's Twitter feed, and she was announcing the second unit director for episode 9 was like one of her friends, I think Victoria something.
Yeah.
Who's also, I believe, the first like black female director, technically the first black female director in the Star Wars universe, directing second unit, but still, it is something. But but the way it was worded and the way it seemed like you were like, oh shit, Ava DuVernay is directing episode 9. And you texted me that, and I was like, whoa. I mean, I like Ava DuVernay. But based on A Wrinkle in Time, I don't want her. I don't want her doing Star Wars. You know?
Yeah.
You know. I want her to get like another shot at a blockbuster movie, which she's supposed to be making something for DC. So we'll see if that ever happens.
Right.
But I would definitely see that, and you know, based on how that works out, I would be into an Ava DuVernay Star Wars. But based solely on A Wrinkle in Time, I'm not sure I want that just yet.
You're not on board yet.
Not on board yet. But anyway, yeah. So that is A Wrinkle in Time. And then I have 2 more movies that I want to talk about, Mike. The first one is a movie that I feel like I wasn't sure if I was going to see this, and then I was kind of like I was invited, and I was like, dragged along to it. So I was like, all right, I'll go see Rampage. Why not?
Oh no!
Why?
Is Amir? Is he considerably bigger?
He's definitely bigger. What's happening to my friend?
I'm gonna figure this out, George. I promise.
He's growing, isn't he?
He's not the only one.
They're gonna put him down. That's not happening.
George, go! Rampage, rated PG-13.
Why not? This is the new movie directed by Brad Payton, who directed The Rock a few years ago in San Andreas. It's got The Rock. It's got monsters. I was not bored.
All right. There you go.
It is dumb as shit. It's just, I think the evil villains in this movie are played by Malin Ackerman and Jake Lacey. And they are the most evil.
Wow.
With the absolute stupidest evil plan imaginable. It's actually amazing how dumb their plan is in this movie. And then basically the movie kind of, it's like maybe an hour and 20 minutes or so of getting the monsters into the city, and then having like 40 minutes of the monsters in the city. And it's solid for what it is. Like, I enjoyed some of the monster action. I was kind of surprised by how quickly and efficiently this movie gets you to care about The Rock's friendship with the gorilla, with George. Like, it's actually kind of surprising. Like, cause that's kind of the thing. The Rock is friends with the gorilla George because he's like the wildlife tamer at the San Diego Zoo or whatever. Mm-hmm. The gorilla just is immediately given like this kind of humorous personality, and he has this like really funny relationship with The Rock. And it does that in like one scene. Like, it's literally like one scene, and then it kind of just gets going. Like, this movie does not have pacing problems. I can tell you that, because it just kind of moves.
That's impressive.
Which is nice. So I was surprised at how quickly this movie gets you to care about The Rock's friendship with this ape. But then, it gets to the big climax in Chicago with all the monsters attacking, and the gorilla turns into other monsters and starts helping The Rock. There's a huge wasted opportunity here, because how does this movie not end with The Rock also turning into a giant? It just...
Oh, my God.
That to me, like, it almost, like, sets that up. Like, there's a lot of, like the reason these monsters became gigantic and like rage fueled is because of this like serum that they ended up like sniffing the gas of, and that serum is present during the climax. So like The Rock could have sniffed it, and he could have gotten bigger. It would have been amazing.
Holy shit! Giant Rock fighting the giant monsters. That would have been incredible.
I would have been so on board for that, but that didn't happen, unfortunately. But still, I did have a lot of fun. Not a lot of fun, but I thought it was a solid time. Like, I didn't hate it. I haven't thought about it much since I watched it, but it's a fine time at the movies. I think it might be, by default, the best video game movie ever made.
Yeah, it broke like 50. It's like 52% on Rotten Tomatoes, and it's like the highest rated video game of all time. Or
The Rock
video game movie.
The Rock was bragging about that on Twitter too, which was even better.
Well, he also self-burned himself. I don't know if you saw that, where he said he was in the stinker Doom.
Yes, Doom.
Amazing.
Yeah, that's pretty funny. And then whoever runs the Doom Twitter account like tweeted at him like, Dwayne, come on. But yeah, also Jeffrey Dean Morgan is in Rampage, and he gives a fun performance. He's fun. I enjoyed watching him a lot more than I have on The Walking Dead over the past year and a half.
Wow.
Which, by the way, I stopped watching The Walking Dead a while back, or about halfway through the season. I didn't catch up from the mid-season premiere onward.
Yeah.
But I read some of the Wikipedia synopses just to see what happened on this past season, because the finale just aired. And I was reading the Wikipedia synopsis and I got mad. And I was like, I can't believe I wasted my time reading this.
So you think you made the right choice, is what you're saying?
I think I made the right call, because I could have wasted my time watching 8 hours of a show.
Oh my God.
Or knowing The Walking Dead, every episode would have been like 2 hours long.
Yeah.
But I got mad reading, like, taking 5 minutes to read all the Wikipedia synopses for the end of the season. So yeah, that is Rampage. And then I have one more movie to talk about, Mike, and it's the one that I was kind of most looking forward to. And it's a movie called Isle of Dogs.
Wait a second. Before we attack each other and tear ourselves to shreds like a pack of maniacs, let's just open the sack first and see what's actually in it. It might not even be worth the trouble.
I don't know. What do you think? I'm not sure. Maybe. Hi.
A rancid apple core, 2 worm-eaten banana peels, a moldy rice cake, a dried-up pickle, tin of sardine bones, a pile of broken eggshells, an old smushed-up rotten gizzard with maggots all over it.
Okay, it's worth it.
Which is the new movie directed by Wes Anderson. And there is a lot to love about Island Dogs, Mike. If you like Wes Anderson, I think you'll likely enjoy this movie. It's very Wes Anderson-y. It does feel a little more hollow than some of his recent films, I would say. I think the run, like he had an amazing run of Fantastic Mr. Fox, Moonrise Kingdom, and Grand Budapest Hotel. They are, to my mind, probably the best movies he's done in his entire career. And this, by comparison, feels very scattershot. There are characters that it kind of just ditches in the second half that I was disappointed not to see more of, because I loved those characters in that first half. But I will throw out there that most Wes Anderson movies tend to improve for me on the rewatch. Like for whatever it is about him, like I enjoy his movies the first time and then I end up loving them the second or third time. Like Fantastic Mr. Fox is one of my all-time favorite movies, but it didn't become that until I had seen it at least twice, probably even 3 times. And that just kind of reveals how brilliant it is over time. So Isle of Dogs, I could definitely have that impact on me. I've only seen it the one time. I will say there's an odd choice on his part. I think it mostly works, but I've seen some criticize it, where you can understand everything the dogs are saying, but all the humans speak in their native language, unsubtitled, and most of this movie takes place in Japan. Mm-hmm. So it's a lot of unsubtitled Japanese that you're watching the humans speak. For a lot of the movie, and a lot of times there's there's a like an English translator there, like Frances McDormand plays a translator character, and stuff like that. But it is just a little odd, I guess, to me. And I've seen some people criticize it as criticize this movie as for cultural appropriation reasons, and I get that, and I totally understand that. To me, it kind of played like Wes Anderson just paying tribute to Kurosawa. It felt like he was paying tribute to some of the Japanese cinematic artists who he's a big fan of. But it also does feel like if this movie didn't take place in Japan and didn't have that style for it, mm-hmm. I'm not sure that there's enough substance here compared to other Wes Anderson movies to really make this worthwhile. But I loved the animation of this movie. The stop motion animation is pretty gorgeous. If you love the animation for Fantastic Mr. Fox like I do, this is kind of a treat. And it has a lot of that Wes Anderson style humor, which I'm a big fan of. Bryan Cranston plays the lead role as Chief, one of the dogs. And he's really good. And the ensemble characters of the dogs, Edward Norton, Bob Balaban, Bill Murray, and Jeff Goldblum, perfect.
Holy shit.
They are absolutely fantastic, and those are the characters that kind of get ditched like halfway through the movie. But that first half, when they are there, they're fantastic. Like if the whole movie was about those characters, I think I would have fallen in love with it entirely. But in any case, yeah, that is Isle of Dogs, new movie directed by Wes Anderson. I'm sure you're going to go see that at some point, Mike.
Yeah.
Because I know you're a Wes Anderson fan, a Wes head, as we like to call ourselves in the biz.
Do we, or did you just make that up?
You know what? We don't have to.
Time will tell.
Right now.
Time will tell.
Anyway, Mike, I think we should wrap up our discussions now and move on to our featured review. It's time for our review of A Quiet Place. All right, that was from the trailer for A Quiet Place, the new movie written by Brian Woods, Scott Beck, and John Krasinski, and directed by John Krasinski. It stars John Krasinski, Emily Blunt, Millicent Simmons, and Noah Jupe, among others. And the IMDb plot synopsis for A Quiet Place reads, a family is forced to live in silence while hiding from creatures that hunt by sound. So, Mike, I mean, you've seen the trailers for A Quiet Place, I'm assuming, before this.
Yes.
I'm curious what the reaction to those trailers were like when you saw them in the theater.
It's like the general reaction, you mean, like in the theater?
Yeah, when you were in theaters in months past and you were seeing the trailer for this movie, because I think it's a interesting trailer because it's a very quiet trailer.
Yeah,
fitting for A Quiet Place. But it was a very tense trailer, and it's one that I thought was really engaging, and it is one that it seemed like audiences were pretty into when I was at the theater, which was surprising because it seemed like I feel like most audiences in general don't go for really quiet stuff.
Yeah. It was a very interesting combination to see movie trailers for things like this, and then like also Solo or something like that. Right. Not that those movies would have played at the same time. But
every other trailer is this incredibly loud blockbuster, and then you have A Quiet Place, this very quiet.
Yeah.
kind of trailer.
Yeah, and it definitely was. It's such an interesting and bold move to be like, nah, we're not going to have any of that going on in this movie, and in the trailers and in the but that's a really great hook, I think. So
yeah, definitely. I mean, I guess I was pretty excited for this. It actually filmed near me, most of this movie was shot in New Paltz and Beacon and Pauling, all areas that are very close to my house. So there's been a lot of hype for this movie in my area for quite a long time. And then, this premiered at South by Southwest a couple of weeks ago. And it just got like a huge reaction there. People loved the movie. And then it came out and got great reviews, and it opened at like $50 million, which was huge for this kind of movie. So it made a lot of money, and it's really good.
Yeah,
I really enjoy it. Who would have thought Jim Halpert had a movie like this in him? You know what I mean?
That sneaky son of a bitch. Yeah.
That's he is giving that Jim face and flipping everybody off right now. But yeah, it's crazy. They made a whole movie built around the clickers from The Last of Us.
Yo, okay, so here's the thing.
Okay.
You're exactly right. And everyone always, I remember when Logan came out, everyone was like, this is the secret Last of Us movie, because...
Right, yeah.
No, but it's the Quiet Place. I need John Krasinski, when they make the Last of Us movie, he needs to be Joel. Like, it's gotta be. It's gotta be him.
You think so?
Yeah.
I mean, he has a beard, so he's already out.
He's there. He looks dope in a flannel. He's got the whole role.
And we know he can avoid creatures that click.
Exactly.
And hunt by sound, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, part of just because I've played The Last of Us, part of my thought process during this movie was like, has he not played The Last of Us? Throw a can,
get your brick,
throw a can across the room.
Come on.
But yeah, so A Quiet Place. I felt this was a really tense, very economical horror movie, built around a single gimmick, and it wrings, I think, every possibility out of that gimmick. Emily Blunt, I think, is the easy highlight of the movie here for me. I think she's amazing. Her performance is great. And she gets probably the best horror sequence, too. Like, her big moment is just really awesome.
Yeah, I agree. I think this movie is really incredible. There is a really, like I said, bold... It's a really bold move to make a horror movie without all of the audio stings and all of the tropes, although I mean it clearly plays on your expectations around how sound is used in horror movies, which is great. There's the scene that's in the trailer, when the son knocks the lantern over while they're playing Monopoly and the all that stuff. But there's a moment where John Krasinski leans over to look out the window, and the sound cuts out, because there's minimal score throughout some of this, I think.
Right, there is a score.
I wasn't sure
definitely.
if I just inserted that in my memory, or if there was actually a score, which is how minimalist it is, which is awesome. But the sound cuts out, and here's the jump scare, right? Because that's what that signals to everyone. And then I had the realization that, holy shit, this whole movie's going to have that, and I'm never going to get the jump scare. And I just got even more tense and scared, and was just like, oh, no. Like, it's awesome. I love how they use that.
Yeah, definitely. I think what I like about this is the world building that it does very quickly. I think its opening scene and smash cut to title are just absolutely terrific. Like, it immediately establishes everything you need to know about this world. And it does a really great job of showing what life is like in this world where you can't make a sound. Everyone walks barefoot in dirt paths. They don't use plates at the dinner table. Like, they use fig leaves or something.
Yeah.
The Monopoly pieces that they're playing with are made of felt and stuff like that. And they even fixed the baby crying problem with a breathing apparatus in a box inside a soundproof room. Like, that was inventive. That was a really cool thing to see. And then for me, I think the movie goes for a little extra exposition, which it does not need to do, and feels kind of clunky at some points. There's a newspaper early on, or during the opening scene actually. They're out leaving a building, and you see a newspaper, and it says there's a big headline that says "It's sound,"
yeah,
and stuff like that. And then there's the John Krasinski's whiteboard, which I thought was really I liked a lot about this movie. I thought the whiteboard was really dumb. I did not like the whiteboard at all. That is the biggest Deus Ex whiteboard.
I mean, I guess, yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. Well, I mean, we'll talk about that in spoilers. But yeah, to me, that whiteboard was this movie was so smart on so many other fronts, and to me, just that whiteboard was you didn't need that.
Didn't need it, yeah.
But it does feel like it feels like it's a mainstream attempt at an art house type of horror movie.
Yeah.
So it's not going to be something like The Witch.
yeah. It follows.
Which it's not if it was The Witch, no one would go see it except for me, and I would love it.
Right.
But if this is a Platinum Dunes horror movie, and that's the company that it's Michael Bay's production company, I think. And they have produced a lot of horror movies in the past, and they were actually pretty famous for doing the horror remakes for a while. So they did the remake Friday the 13th, and they did the remake of Nightmare on Elm Street and stuff like that. But it seems like with A Quiet Place, they are trying something newer and something more original. And it seems like that's kind of the direction they want to move the company towards. Like they don't want to just be the remake company anymore, which is kind of cool.
Yeah.
But it does feel like, because it is almost maybe because it's a Michael Bay production, it's like they just got to throw in make sure everybody knows what's going on. It's sound.
Yeah. But I definitely did really appreciate the lack of exposition in general, right? We don't need to know where these things are or where they came from. I mean, we don't need to know about other people, really. We don't need to know we don't need to know more about the world, right? We get just the bare minimum of what we need to tell the story of this family, and
yes,
I really applauded that. Without in the age of cinematic universe where we have to go explain people from this other thing and set up other links and all this shit. We don't need cut all that out. We don't need any of it right now. And I did love the smash cut to credits. It reminded me a lot of the effectiveness of 10 Cloverfield Lane. 10 Cloverfield Lane's opening credits sequence.
Oh yeah, definitely, yeah. The smash cut to opening credits, you mean?
What did I say?
But you said smash cut to credits, but just smash cut to the opening.
Opening credits. Yeah.
But yeah, otherwise, I mean, I think, I think it's interesting you bring up that it is such a confined movie, just set on this one family, and I like that about it very much, and I think it mostly works in that regard. I think the conflict between John Krasinski and his daughter never really registered for me, and a lot of the movie hinges on that, but the movie just keeps moving, and it keeps serving up really intense sequences that it overcomes that pretty easily. I was just so invested by what was going on. How are they going to survive this? How could they possibly get out of this situation? So the stuff with Krasinski and his daughter, and we'll talk about that in the spoilers. I think it's there and it feels functional, but it never really feels like it grabbed me that much. But I think part of that is that I think the ending of this movie, which again hinges on that whiteboard, verges on kind of dumb, but is really saved by the majesty of that last shot, and also just the greatness of that set piece in general. But the last shot of the movie was oh shit, yes,
yeah,
and then it just cuts to credits, and it's yep, that's where that was perfect.
That's where it has to end. Yeah.
But yeah, any other stuff in the movie you want to talk about, Mike, before we get into spoilers, or should we move on to some other stuff?
I think this movie is incredible. Like I think you might have mentioned, sort of. It's incredibly clever in its gimmick. I
think so too.
I really was the way that those things are that the not being able to make a sound is used was awesome, and that's such a it reminded me sort of like a better version of Don't Breathe. Right, where it's the gimmick is the guy's blind, he has ultra hearing, and whatever, we're in the dark and all this stuff. And I think this is a much better use of that kind of thing. Also, this movie has to be applauded for being one of the only movies in recent memory, at least, to have a person with a disability played by an actress that actually has that disability. Millicent, I can't remember.
Simmons, I think.
Simpson?
Yeah, Millicent Simmons.
She is actually deaf.
Samsonite.
Samson. There we go.
No, it was Simmons.
Simmons. Oh, okay. No,
I was messing with you.
Way to go, Mike. I trusted you, and you let me down. But yeah, she is actually deaf, and her character is deaf, and the importance of that to the story and this family's survival, I think, should not go unmentioned. Right? Like just it seems a lot like them knowing American Sign Language is part of the reason that they survive, which is really cool.
Yeah, definitely. All right, I think we can move on to spoilers, Mike. Let's move on to spoilers for A Quiet Place, starting right now.
Stop it, both of you! You're spoiling it! You're spoiling everything!
All right, it's time for spoilers for A Quiet Place, starting right now. So I think the best scene in this movie, for me, is pretty easily the bathtub silent birth scene that Emily Blunt goes through. That whole sequence with Chekhov's floorboard nail.
Oh my god!
Well, you see that nail go up, and it's like, oh no, because what's about to happen.
Oh yeah.
But then the alien monster, whatever creature, comes in, and she goes down the stairs and has to she steps on the nail, goes into her foot, and she has to not make a sound as that happens. Meanwhile, she's about to give birth, like her water is already broken at this point.
Yeah.
It's a very stressful sequence.
Oh my god!
And Emily Blunt sells the hell out of it, and it ends with her having to give birth completely silent in the bathtub. With no one else around her, too. It's nuts.
Yeah.
It's real good.
Yeah, I think this movie does a really great job of setting up a lot of things, right? The payoff for, like, Chekhov's nail, like you said. The importance of just the word rockets,
right?
Which the emotional gut punch that is when John Krasinski says that to his son, which also, I think none of the characters are named, right? They don't everyone's he or she or him.
Right, yeah. I don't think they have the names, yeah.
Which is just a cool detail. I don't know. I like that. But yeah, when he tells his son, like, rockets, and just, like, immediately recalls the son from the beginning who gets fucking crushed because of his rocket ship. But yeah, I thought that, like, that concept of make a bigger noise, I thought that was really clever. I don't know. I really liked that payoff, recalling the waterfall and all that stuff. I don't know.
Right, yeah, they set that up with the waterfall, and, like, say that if you're near something that's making a lot of noise, like, it won't hear you, that kind of thing. And then they have that distraction with the fireworks, and yeah, it works out really well. And there's a lot of stuff like that in this movie where they set up something at the beginning and it pays off later, which I like. Also, a big fan of the sequence in the silo, which is very cool. It's a really great tense sequence, and the way that monster just rips through the silo like it's paper or something that's really that's insane. Makes it a little weird that it can't break into the car later on in the movie.
I thought that also, yeah.
But still, like, I'm willing to buy it. Like, it's fine. But really, the movie this reminded me the most of, actually, you mentioned Don't Breathe, which I think is apt. This movie reminded me of Signs, M. Night Shyamalan's Signs. I think it's a better version of Signs. Just from the way the monsters move in the background of shots, right, the ending. The ending of this movie, which involves discovering that the daughter's recurring character trait is actually the key to defeating these monsters all along.
Man, how come you didn't set up a Boom Roasted or Boom Goes the Dynamite with that? You missed an opportunity.
I guess I did, yeah.
But yeah, you're exactly right, actually. Yeah.
Yeah. So in that movie, it's water, and in this one, it's the feedback from her hearing aids. What kind of bugs me about this is that this weakness becomes clear pretty early on, right? So I think there are like 3 separate occasions where the monster almost attacks the daughter, right, before the end of the movie, but then the monster leaves when it hears the feedback from her hearing aid. Like, we as an audience pick up on what's happening pretty early on, but the character doesn't. Like, she does not realize that until the very end of the movie when she sees the word weakness on Deus Ex whiteboard, and then she thinks, oh yeah, weakness, we should look for that. and then she does the feedback thing, and that feels like. I think it feels like a kind of dumb moment for an otherwise pretty smart movie, because otherwise this movie is characters being really smart in really tense situations. Like, they know their shit and they know what they're doing. And to me, that moment just feels like, maybe you should, like, you could have thought of that before, right? Because the monsters attacked her like 2 or 3 times before that happened. And like every time, like, the feedback would happen and the monster would run away. And, like, you could say maybe she was stressed out because she was being attacked by a monster. Like, that's fair. But I don't know. It just feels like, in a movie where everything else is so well orchestrated, like, that kind of bugs me a little bit.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I did notice that too, but the first time it happens where, like, the audience is shown it, the monster is behind her, and she doesn't know it because she's deaf, so she has no idea that thing's behind her, and then the feedback happens and the monster runs away. So that's where we learn about it. Then I think it's the silo, maybe, is the second. It definitely happens at least once before where you might make that leap. Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, then she sees the word weakness while it's happening, and yeah, fair enough, I guess. But also, I did dig the, I guess it's like the Stranger Things effect, where when the monster is nearby, the lights flicker and stuff.
Right.
Because I guess that's just cool.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, definitely. I think really just what bugs me about it is just the word weakness being on the whiteboard is what, like, triggers her thinking that, oh yeah, we should look for a weakness, and or something like that.
Yeah, well, it's the phrase, like, what is their weakness or something, and while this is happening, yeah, I mean, it is, like, kind of like, I guess, Deus Ex whiteboard, or at least to give her the thought, right, of this could be the weakness. But the way that pays off, like, just that moment of her ripping off the headphone or the hearing aid and slamming it against the microphone, like, that was pretty dope.
Oh yeah, it's awesome. I feel like I'm coming down harder than I want to. Like, that moment is dope. Like, when she actually does it, and like it leads into that final shot, which is They kill that monster. And they finally figured out how to kill the monster. They use the feedback, and like Emily Blunt shoots the fuck out of it. And then like the movie, like they see on the spy cam that 2 more monsters are coming their way, and now they know how to defeat them. And Emily Blunt just like cocks the shotgun, and then the movie ends. Like that's the last shot of the movie is Emily Blunt with that shotgun, and it was awesome because like that's all you need. Everything else is overkill at this point, I guess, because we've seen like the arc of this movie is them figuring out how to kill these monsters, and now they've done it. Right, so like you can assume they'll probably kill these 2 monsters that are coming, or at least they have like a fighting chance now, which is all that they really wanted.
I did appreciate the whiteboard at least because that it adds that in respect to this, right? Because we don't really until that final moment where she like looks at it and she sees, what is their weakness. We never really like focus on it. I don't think. Maybe during the kind of opening credits or when we first get to the farm, maybe where we're looking at all the. Headlines on the newspapers and stuff, but there's the how many monsters in the area? 3 in a box, right? Like so they keep referencing or they keep putting in the frame that there are 3 of these things around this farm. When she uses the shotgun, I was like, oh shit, there's 2 more. There's gonna be 2 more. Like oh no, and then, it's within like 15 seconds or something that we see the next ones on the security cameras. So, but like that added dread of like where are these next 2 coming from was pretty dope.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, again, it does a really good job of just setting up everything and pays off really, really well. But yeah, and before I was talking about the kind of conflict between John Krasinski's character and the daughter, and so the daughter blames herself for the death of their brother in the opening scene of this movie. Which the opening scene we talked about a little bit is fantastic. Like I think it's. Like if you got rid of that newspaper that said it's sound, it'd be perfect. Like genuine, because I mean you don't need that newspaper there to tell you that it's sound because if you just have everything else that's going on in that scene, like you can gather what's going on. Yeah, pretty much. Like you have John Krasinski like carefully taking the batteries out of this toy rocket ship so that doesn't make any sound and stuff like that. And then you have the kid walking with the toy rocket ship, the batteries go back in, and as soon as you hear that rocket ship go off, you're like, oh fuck, and you see John Krasinski's look of terror as he like looks back at the kid and starts running towards him, and the monster just swoops down and takes him. That's nuts. It's crazy.
Yeah, what a crazy way to start your movie than have a 4-year-old child just get fucking wrecked by a monster. Because like that's it's a really I mean it's a second, but it's like really grisly. Like just the flash across the frame and then he's gone. Like I don't know.
I was surprised. I was surprised to find out this movie's rated PG-13 because I didn't know about that until after the movie, after I'd seen it. But then I thought back on it and I was like, the movie did such a good job of actually like making you feel like you saw everything, I guess. Yeah. But without actually showing you everything, which I think is key to what this movie is. It's not like a gory horror movie or anything like that. It's more built on like suspense and fear and the atmosphere that it creates having a world with no sound.
So with a movie being PG-13, this is the weird instance that, sort of relates back to our Netflix versus Cannes discussion, where I am glad I saw this in a theater, but I almost wish I had just seen it at home in my own darkness alone. Yeah, because I was in a theater. I went on a Monday night at 8 p.m. and there were shitty teenagers in there with their phone talking when they realized when you move your straw up and down in a soda cup it makes a weird noise. Doing that for a long time. And you hear every bite of popcorn people take because there's no sound in this movie, and it ruins so much of it. Luckily, I mean, it was like the first 20 minutes until someone jumped up and yelled at them to shut the fuck up, and then they were like, got in that dude's face and then left. So those first 20 minutes, I was so mad and was just like, I was so close to just getting up and like going to get somebody. But yeah, it was this is a movie that you have to be careful what theater or what kind of audience you see it with, because so much of it heavily relies on being mature enough to sit in silence and watch this thing without ruining it for everyone. Teenagers suck, Mike. That's what I'm getting at. Stay tuned for more hot takes
on Teenagers Suckcast. It's.
Might want to rephrase that.
Yeah, you're probably right. It's a bummer that you had that experience. I saw it in actually a pretty good crowd. It wasn't super crowded. I went in a matinee on like a Wednesday at like 3:00, and it was probably like 20 other people in the theater, but they were all like pretty chill, and like everybody was on the edge of their seat. Like it was pretty tense. So my theater was pretty much completely silent. There are like, you can hear everything in the theater for a lot of points in this movie. So if somebody is eating popcorn or something, like you will hear the crunch of popcorn. But I'm not going to begrudge them their popcorn crunch. Like that's
no, like,
it's
I
not
totally
like talking
get that.
during the movie.
Yeah,
but,
although I did love the moment. So the opposite end of the spectrum is when Emily Blunt blows the thing's head off. Someone yelled, "Yes, fuck you!" and it was like the best moment. Everyone cheered and went nuts. So sometimes theater sound is great, and sometimes it's the worst.
Yeah, definitely. What did you think of John Krasinski's big sacrifice moment in the movie, Mike? That big moment. So we kind of got off track for a little bit, but I was talking about the conflict between him and his daughter. We were trying to talk about that before anyway, and then we started talking about how teenagers suck. But through no fault of your own. I don't know. Maybe it was just the performances. Like I think they were solid performances. But for me, for some reason, their relationship just didn't click for me in that way. Like I didn't buy that she really believed that John Krasinski didn't love her anymore, and I didn't buy really that John Krasinski was treating her that badly. You know what I mean? Yeah, I think the way I interpreted all that was, it's only about a year later or something like that, because we have day 89, and then it's like after the credits, it's like day 470 something, whatever. Right. We should point out. I mean, this movie starts off on like day 45, right?
And it's pretty early.
And I think what's interesting about that to me is that it's only been 45 days, and the entire world has already gone to shit. Like it seems like they're the only people left at that point already.
Yeah, but also to be fair, they're in like an upstate New York town, so like it might look like that normally anyway. Slam.
Wow, burn on me. That's
dunked on upstate New York. But no, I do agree that like I thought it was really funny, like that it's sound newspaper, because think of how loud a newspaper printing press would be. And I think it's like the New York Daily News, like, or something like that. Like, just think about.
They would be the first to go.
Yeah. Or like, just think about how much sound is in a city, right? Or so, like somewhere they'd be printing that paper while this is going on. But anyway, the way that'll be in the Quiet Place sequel or prequel, where we see that.
One newsman desperately trying to get a paper out there so the world can know.
It's a dark investigative journalism tale in the Quiet Place universe. But anyway, the way I interpreted all that was it's a young, how old do you think her character is? She might be like 13, right? Dealing with the grief of feeling responsible for her brother's death in this insane situation where the world, there's monsters and stuff. So I took it to be a child's irrational grief, right? Where she thinks she's putting all this on herself and thinking her father doesn't love her. But like clearly he does, of course. And the other brother is, they're around the same age as her. So I think it was that kind of like naive young child dealing with incredibly traumatic situations, projecting a lot of stuff.
Yeah, I mean, I think I agree with you there, and I think Krasinski's big sacrifice does work at the end. I think it's a really solid moment from him. I think I think as far as the acting goes, he's good in the movie, but I think he gets completely outshone by his wife Emily Blunt. But I think his strength in this movie is really as the director. I think he really does an incredible job putting these set pieces together, and I was shocked by that. Like I think he's directed like 2 movies before this. And neither one got like a ton of press or critical acclaim or anything like that. And neither one was a horror movie. They were like kind of like comedy dramas. And so this was a surprising move for John Krasinski as a director, but definitely a really interesting one. And I'm kind of excited to see what he does next. I think he's already lined up like a sci-fi thriller.
Yes, yeah.
Which, so like that's pretty dope. Like I did not see that coming.
And I think this is like a really beautiful movie. There's a lot of really interesting shots. I think just like and just the landscape of upstate New York, like those kind of rolling hills, right? It's probably that's the Catskills, right down over there.
Maybe. I mean, some of it's definitely New Paltz. I think it's New Paltz, Beacon, and Pauling are the towns that they filmed in around here. They might have done the Catskills too. But there's like the bridge at the beginning is a bridge that I recognize from New Paltz. Yeah.
That's awesome. But yeah, just like that kind of rolling, early fall village, rural town kind of thing. And it's just beautiful to look at. And I'm excited to see, more of Krasinski doing this kind of stuff. I'm also, you mentioned Jordan Peele earlier. We're going to get these like awesome, not necessarily like just coincidence that it's comedians, I guess, but like going really hard into like genre film. I'm excited to see what that can like revive some cool shit like that, maybe.
Absolutely. Do you think there's going to be another comedian comes out in another horror film next year that's actually amazing?
I can't wait for John Mulaney's slasher film.
It's just his horror story about Delta Airlines. Turned into a slasher. Because we're Delta Airlines. Life is a fucking nightmare. That's the tagline.
John Mulaney, if you're listening, that one's for free.
Man, I love John Mulaney so much. Did you watch his Saturday Night Live this past week by any chance?
I did not.
Man, it was great.
I'm glad.
Completely irrelevant to our Quiet Place discussion, but John Mulaney on SNL was aces. He's the best. There was one sketch that he did called Diner Lobster. You have to watch it. It is so good. It was a sketch that he wrote when he was on SNL back in the day that never made it to air.
Wow.
And it's awesome. It's so good. And his monologue was just from his new stand-up special, and that was awesome too. But anyway, yeah. Let's get back to A Quiet Place. But yeah, and there's also talk about like a sequel to this movie like in the works now, or the writers are talking about like possibly doing something else in the universe of A Quiet Place. The Quiet Cinematic Universe could could be a thing pretty soon. Would you want to see more stuff in this world, Mike? Like even if not following the same characters?
I was thinking because I had heard of that after that before I saw the movie. I heard that they were talking about sequels and stuff already. And I don't think I do. I think this movie is so strong on that family and in this situation, and like I talked about earlier, not knowing where these monsters came from, and
right.
all of the kind of extraneous mystery that goes into that. And I would be much happier if we only get this story and we don't get that prequel about where they came from and like all this stuff. Maybe I was thinking of like Cloverfield Paradox, like. We didn't need that movie to explain how Cloverfield happened, right? And this kind of, I was thinking of if this becomes like an anthology kind of thing, that might be kind of cool, just stories in this world. But I also don't know how long this gimmick could sustain, because we kind of did all of the cool things already.
It feels like this kind of brings that gimmick to its limit. And it does it really well. It kind of reminded me of Unfriended, actually, which came out a few years ago, and that's a movie that was actually really good. And it's a movie that takes place entirely over Skype, right? It's like everything takes place on a computer screen, and that's like the gimmick behind it. But it's actually it does everything that it can possibly do to make the internet terrifying, and the internet's already terrifying. But like but Unfriended does a lot of really good stuff there. Like it shows like how scary just like somebody popping something like a message on Facebook coming in could be. But there is a sequel to Unfriended that just came out, I think, or it's coming out soon. I think it premiered South by Southwest, and I've heard it's pretty disappointing because it's like, well, you've already done everything you can do.
Yeah.
in that scenario. So I feel like A Quiet Place might fall into the same thing there. But in any case, I think this movie is a really strong horror movie. I'm really excited to see what John Krasinski does next. And I think that about wraps up our thoughts on A Quiet Place, right, Mike? Unless you have anything else you want to add?
No, I think that's it.
Okay, it's cool. So definitely go see it if you haven't yet. If you love horror movies, this is definitely one to go see. It's a mainstream attempt at an art house kind of horror movie, and I think it's kind of cool. But anyway, where can we find you online this week, Mike?
You can find me at twitter.com/mdfilmblog.
And you can find me online at twitter.com/msmithfilmblog and all our podcasts and stuff at filmbook.com. You don't have any D&D games you want to plug or anything, Mike? Just Twitter?
Just Twitter, yeah. Nothing for the general population to consume, Mike.
Okay. Fair enough. Thank you so much for listening to FilmBookCast. I'm Mike Smith. That's Mike DeCrescio. If you're listening to this review of our podcast on iTunes, subscribe, rate, take a moment to give us a review. Feedback, compliments, topic discussions, even hate mail can be sent directly to podcast@filmbook.com. Please list the podcast you email about the title of your email, because we produce so many different ones to keep track. We would love to hear from you. Now, join us for the next episode of FilmBookCast, where I think we'll be talking a little movie. Maybe you heard of it. It starts with an A. Ends with Avengers.
You son of a bitch. It's a small art house film.
screening in like 3 theaters. It's fine. Avengers: Infinity War is coming out next week, and we will be talking about it. I'm very, very excited about this one, Mike. I can't wait.
It'll be our longest episode yet, I'm sure.
I think it would have to be because we got to collect all of the Infinity Stones while we're recording the episode too, and we've learned that it takes about 18 movies. So
buckle up,
buckle up for the 46-hour episode of FilmBookCast. It's going to be amazing. And you can check out our next complete works, where we're talking Nicolas Cage's role in a very different kind of superhero movie, 2010's Kick-Ass. So thanks so much for listening, guys. We are out.
Still remains within the sound of silence.